That is so difficult to say. Luckily, we've got the picks and the bans to help me out a little bit. We're gonna be seeing Corrupted Keep and Blood Covenant for starters, and then if it gets to that point, Blood Run, the Russian standard, might be the decider. So we're gonna see BJ versus Galena, Visor versus Nyx. Nyx, that's always a huge threat on the map that is Blood Covenant. And then finally, it will be the Ison versus the Strogg. No particular advantages that I really see, no blatant counter picks or hard counters towards any of these champions. Overall, relatively balanced all the way through, I would say. But looking at the recent results, as I just said, I probably do have to favor Av3k in this matchup. The only thing going against that is that Coollerz finished the last 2 weeks extremely strong, right? We just saw the overview. He beat Kilson and Wenger in the last 2 weeks leading up to this tournament, so clearly he's got some momentum behind him and he's looking good.
Yeah, and I've seen a huge uptick in his practice schedule as well. So obviously taking this very seriously, and just, I guess, reflective of how I said he thinks about events in a different way. Like, in the previous 3 or 4 times I've casted him on Blood Covenant, he's always picked Ison, and he doesn't pick it here. So he clearly has been evaluating what has and hasn't worked throughout the season, and then looked at the matchup specifically today and said, I'm going with Nyx. So again, that to me shows he's definitely on a good level.
No, yeah, it does look like, actually, I mean, all things considered in the best of 5, right? Normally we get either a little bit more spice towards the early portion of the series, and then it starts to taper off with the champion picks towards the end. But here, it's actually quite tame. It looks a more lot like, actually, they've looked into these games, the benchmarks have been done, and both of them have picked around each other. It seems like this matchup is going to be them playing the player, rather, of course, trying to actually compete outside of that. So it should be a fantastic series. I'm going to leave it in your very capable hands, boys. Take it away.
I mean, one of the absolute core factors as well is that this is a finals. It may be a finals in a slightly different circumstance to what our pros are used to, but the reality is, it is cooler when the time has come. And we'll see if that's going to play any kind of contribution here. Coollerz is, of course, a Pro League champion. And even though Av3k has had a pretty decent record against him in the past, we will see if that changes today.
Yeah. Starting things off on Av3k's point of view, though, we've got the BJ versus the Galena. Always going to be interesting to see how Coollerz decides to use the totems. Immediately off the start, he knows that Av3k has no weapons to work with. All that the Polish Prince has available in his arsenal is the shotgun and the tripod. Coollerz knows this. He doesn't want to give up positioning towards the Mega, towards the LG side of the map right now, because he wants to keep those items out of the hands of his opponent. And that's a strategy that really doesn't work on all that many maps. But this one, Corrupted Keep, is probably the single easiest map, or the most suitable one, to try and actually deny weapons to your opponent. And that's exactly what Coollerz doing right now. He's not overextending, doesn't push his own way onto the shotgun, but he's just trying to hold Av3k at a distance to make sure he can't get a hold of that weapon.
You can see Coollerz. He's being nice and patient, actually. Was almost looking for some kind of early rocket push, but Av3k was being really patient. But it's funny you should mention that, yeah, because just look at, until right now, Av3k spent that entire time, like he's only just got a rocket launcher he only had a tri-bolt and a super shotgun. So if we're looking at weapons in its purest form, Coollerz was the one with the advantage, and that is just a melting of the stack. Absolutely ridiculous. Av3k's just spawned. He's going to have a rocket launcher in hand now. Likely to have an LG, of which Coollerz is going to just simply re-establish. Put Av3k into that horrendous part of the map to be in, really. However, Av3k has managed to get probably a bit more damage than we would expect from that situation. Oh! Mid-airs! Delicious third frag. And
it shows the man is a legend. He's been around for a long time, but he hasn't lost his edge. The reflexes, the flick on that mid-air rocket, beautiful to see. Also, Coollerz doing a really good job at getting those totems up and running. He had 3 of them up for the overstack within the first minute and a half of the match. So that clearly shows a lot of restraint, a lot of discipline. The LG kind of looking shabby right there. Av3k, of course, known for his extremely aggressive playstyle, is just going to push right in and take care of Coollerz.
We have to see how Coollerz is going to recover from this, because the heavy's in play, but Av3k doesn't want to sort of dive too heavily into it. Waits until the magic time to pop the dual wield, but the rockets are too good for Coollerz. And I like actually the use of the totems.
Yeah.
Like armor, nail gun room. It's all about just getting your stack back up as fast as possible. And now he's in a great situation to fight for this Mega that's just about to spawn. Av3k, on the other hand, is not so fortunate. And without armor or anything, really, he's going to be a sitting duck in that position. There's a great delay in between the two items, so Coollerz can really run the circuit, if you will. But those totems in the nail gun room, I do wonder how long they're going to be there for. Because the longer they're there, the more really kind of free instance Coollerz has to just constantly disengage, get back a ton of health, and then constantly keep Av3k behind.
Yeah. Also, they're surprisingly well hidden in plain sight. Av3k jumped over them earlier when he was in that room and didn't even notice them or shoot at them. And that is, I think, partially because it's such a red room and the totems show up as just that small red blip on the floor. So if you can kind of blend them into the scenery, it can really help distract your opponent from the fact that they're there. So Coollerz, I think, banking on that, Av3k will finally find them, take them out, but Coollerz is so quick with the push, the aggression coming out from the Russian king, as Av3k will go down once again.
I'd like to point out that even then, Av3k took a little bit longer than perhaps he should have to take out that totem, and that one little moment of, I don't know whether it was hesitation or whatever it was, it gave Coollerz just that ambush that he was looking for, and the LG! Coollerz is looking great today. As I say that, he just gets melted away, but his LG has been sublime from the start of the map until now. He's had some crazy good moments with it. Av3k now laying on the aggression himself, swapping last minute. These are some savage fights, Flea.
It was the LG left on the floor where he died that won him that fight. He spawned and picked up the own lightning gun that he dropped when he passed away in the previous life, and that gave him the extra firepower he needed to take care of Coollerz right there. Now Coollerz, though, in the better position, but almost out of ammo. Av3k will be the one retreating, both players not confident in their ability to take this fight, each of them looking to restack a little bit more. Coollerz stuck in what might be a bad position. Can Av3k keep him there? Problem for Av3k is he's got so little weapons to work with. No rockets, almost out of LG.
Out of nails too. 5-minute warning has been applied. Can Av3k get in and out? At the very least, we need that LG ammo desperately at this stage. Let's get rid of some of those totems. And these totems from Coollerz, he's plotted quite a few of them in some sneaky locations. But here comes another LG fight. And so often in these fights, Av3k comes off worse for wear because it's not just the LG, but it's the swap to heavy machine gun at the end. Kind of like right now, he does pick up a couple of small health bubbles, but Coollerz still just lays that long-ranged pressure on, super thick. And he gets a good call on the respawn. Wonderful call out.
Yeah, one of the things that Av3k is definitely doing right, though, is switching to the dual wields to get those defensive plays out. Yes, it doesn't always work, but he's had some really good luck pushing Coollerz away or even turning things around in situations where he absolutely should have died by just whipping out the dual LG and then taking Coollerz by surprise in a bad position. So the ability is definitely working quite well for him. Coollerz also hasn't really been able to set up a lot of totems in quite a while, so Av3k actively trying to hunt them down to keep that advantage from building up, and the tracking, though, absolutely perfect as Av3k will fall yet again. Now there's 4 minutes left, but if there's one map where you can string together a lot of frags to make a comeback like this happen, it might just be Corrupted Keep.
And we have the time to do it too, especially off a little bit of that plasma coming through. Av3k's going to have to take a little bit of time. But the important thing again is, as long as we talk about the momentum and the comebacks that you can make, once more there's a chunky delay in between those two items. Wait for Av3k.
Nice rocket, though.
Yeah, very good. And he's timed the Mega just right. Forcing Coollerz away, and hang on. Unlikely Coollerz going to survive this, and he's not even able to get a bonus rocket to will it away. What is the spawn going to be? Av3k keeping an eye out for it. Trying to starve anything and anything he can. Again, he's in a good position for the heavy. As long as he can cycle these items, the comeback becomes totally possible. Uh-oh, dual wield. Defensive rockets from Coollerz. Waiting for the moment. Av3k maybe flying a little too close to the sun right there. Coollerz just waits for the moment. Even to the point where he was so confident, he just stopped moving entirely just to let Av3k come forward.
Oh, yeah. And that definitely was a bit of overconfidence. Av3k just thought he had the better positioning because Coollerz was shooting up towards him on the stairs, which usually is very, very tricky to do. But still, the Russian rockets connected beautifully and Av3k's stack just melted like snow before the sun. Does get himself another point on the board though. Av3k knows that Coollerz is more or less stuck. Out comes the dual wield. Can he do anything? Cooler not gonna be baited out of cover right there. That was such a clever play from Cooler. He could have easily tried to run out of the room, but he knew that Av3k wasn't going to push in. Read it perfectly and just held back until the ability ran out.
That was a statue MVP moment right there. Av3k has got to spend some time to try and keep any amount of the items he can, but yeah, we talk in droves really about corrupted keep and how likely comebacks can be. The problem is we have less than 2 minutes left and there's 5 frags of a difference. Not even factoring in the fact that Cooler has been just doing so much damage in these fights that maybe Av3k won't always be healthy to string them together. He's going to be aggressive now because he has no choice. Cooler is already out of there, which introduces a difficult chase down. And Av3k continues to run the circuit, starve the items, but does Cooler even want the items at this stage? That is the question. He's already in and out. Heavy's been taken. That heavy alone, I think, is the winner of the map, because there's no way.
In and out, just like that. Cooller's reads have been absolutely incredible this map, though. Every single time when it feels like Av3k is trapping him, he finds a way out. When Av3k jumped down to go through the teleporter right there after the Mega, Cooler was just already out of the room by the time that Av3k had just decided to go for it. And those are extremely important skills for a game like Quake. And Cooler, of course, a veteran of the series, can read his opponent like an open book, holding his position and just letting Av3k rush into him, knowing that the Polish Prince needs these frags. But with 40 seconds left on the clock and a 6 frag deficit, time is running out.
And it's just bonus damage. There's this absolute knack to just catch that airborne movement from Av3k into perfect LG almost every single time. Fresh off map number 1, Cooler is looking crazy good today. And yeah, the GG's come through. This map ended a fair while ago, but at this point, if you're Av3k, I mean, that's just the nature of corrupted keep. And Cooler is so good on this map. All you can really do is just shake it off, right? We have other maps to get through. Remember, everyone watching, this is a best of 3, so Cooler is going to be 1 map away from moving on against Av3k here. But never say never. It's not over until it's over.
Absolutely. GG to begin with, though. Cooler looking really strong in this first map and potentially a best of 3 game. It's going to be difficult to see what Av3k is going to do to deal with this, though. Now, we always say, of course, Corrupted Keep, it's kind of like it's an entity on its own, right? What happens in Corrupted Keep doesn't necessarily carry over into the next map because it is so easy to keep that momentum going in a map like this. But still, this is a little bit worrying because it wasn't just the strategies. Cooler just had Av3k read like an open book, and his aim was usually superior too.
They had almost identical levels of control over the 2 items, but the main difference was that Cooler had just over, or roughly 1,000 extra damage over Av3k. So they had similar control, but the damage was nowhere near close.
Absolutely. So, map 2, that will be Blood Covenant, and we're going to see Cooler play the Nyx. As ZSX mentioned before we started this series, Cooler very much likes playing Ison on this map, but this time around, the fact that he's going for a small light champion with that invisibility could completely change things up because her dual jump, or rather her wall jump, can be so important on this map. Gives you so much mobility, so many easy and convenient shortcuts.
I feel like we've gone back in time 3 years. I remember when Quake Champions kind of first hit the competitive scene, players like Cooler were always kind of rocking the Nyx on a Blood Covenant. She was, without question, one of the most popular champions that you would see on that map. And Cooler, it always feels like Cooler was one of the first kind of pro players that was not shy of bringing forward that kind of aggressive ghost walk, the aggressive kind of pushes that you can use with it to kind of set up those guaranteed kind of knock-up rockets, finish the job. Obviously, it's a different story now, 3 years later, but it does get me a little bit nostalgic seeing Cooler rock Nyx again.
Oh, absolutely. On the other hand, though, Visor is in some ways a hard counter to Nyx, because when she uses that Ghost Walk, becomes completely invisible, Visor can still keep track of her if he uses his sight at the exact same time. So it's going to be very difficult for Av3k to decide on how he's going to use his ability. We sometimes see player hang on to that piercing sight and use it only when the opposing Nyx pops her ability as well. But then on the other hand, you tend to lose a lot of utility if you decide to hold on to the ability for such a long time. So we very often see others just constantly use it and pop it the moment they've got it up and running.
time, I mean, as and when, I suppose, and that's the benefit of some of these champion abilities, is the kind of multi-use, I suppose, they can bring to the table. But where we are now, it's kind of like you said, Flea, Corrupted Keep. Often what happens in Corrupted Keep stays in Corrupted Keep. It's such a different map to the rest. Very curious to kind of see what the rail game is going to be like, because every time you go from Corrupted Keep to Blood Covenant, there's just this natural difference of you have a map with no rail, and then you instantly enter one of the absolute most rail-heavy maps in the entire scene. So we're going to get a lot of early information, I think. Very interested to see how we tackle things. But I mean, Nyx, she is, or was, for the longest time, one of the most popular champions on this map because of the double jump. It's the fact that she's harder to hit. It's the fact that she's harder to pin down because of the Ghost Walk, but also that important wall jump that just lets her control the all-important high ground.
Yeah, this is a battle of mobility versus information. Av3k playing Divisor, he's got that side at the ready, and we're going to probably see very early on how he's going to use it, whereas Coollerz is obviously trying to just make his way around the map and abuse that mobility as much as he possibly can. Immediately setting up a bit of a delay between the items. There's around 7 seconds between Mega and Heavy, so Coollerz hoping to perhaps chain both of them together in the next rotation.
Piercing Sight's going to get popped instantly by Av3k for the information near Mega, right as he collects the rail. But the fact that he has the rail allows us to play Blood Covenant properly. As we can see, lots of patience coming out from Av3k first. And as long as you control the top, keep your ears on the floor, able to hear the jump pad in that instance. But again, both players, a lot of patience at the start, and there always often is on Blood Covenant. Rails are in play. Unfortunately, the first opening shot is going to get missed by Av3k. The important thing is that he's taking no damage himself, though. And the wonderful call out of the drop down. Av3k was so prepared for that.
A lot of respect being given and received by both of these players. That's a huge amount of tribal damage coming out right there, though. Coollerz, for the time being, has the stack advantage. Heavy will be up first, and it looks like the Russian player is actually going to make a move on it. He's using the Ghost Walk hyper aggressively right behind Av3k. DLG is good from both players. Av3k 8 points of health. Yeah, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, and Coollerz will finish it off with one bullet of the heavy machine gun. 1-0 will be the first frag going towards Coollerz in this map.
It's quite funny how we talk about kind of back in the day when Coollerz was really not shy of using the aggressive Ghost Walk on this map. It's one of the first things that we see. Looks like Av3k got a little bit of a drop down. Coollerz has to be careful with those rockets. Didn't hit its mark though, thankfully. But that is going to be an early start for Coollerz, and he's going to keep the control as well. You don't always see the light champions use those kind of early rocket jumps fresh off the heavy. Sometimes they don't want to take that crazy damage, but as Coollerz able to keep range and hit rail angles like that, I think it's a good situation. That second rail and the third make it.
Wow.
Surely we don't even need the rail anymore. And Coollerz knows it. The rocket downwards, but he's going to use the Ghost Walk. If he plays his cards right, this could be a frag, but he's so weak, it's a huge risk.
I can't believe that Av3k got out of that one alive. How low he was. Luckily for him, the small armor was there. He had a few health bubbles to work with, but Coollerz, by all accounts, should have been able to finish that right there. Good read, though. Misses the shot, unfortunately, and will loop right back around towards the Mega health. Now, I think that we're going to see some more cautious play come out of Av3k right now, because Coollerz has clearly shown that he's no stranger to the aggressive Ghost Walk. And right now, today, he absolutely isn't going to shy away from using it that way if he feels that the time is right. So Av3k knows that at any given time, a Coollerz might just appear out of thin air and just deal a ton of damage. So he's got to be careful for that.
You can always assume that perhaps Av3k will be more prepared for an aggressive Ghost Walk if he knows Coollerz has the heavy, kind of like right now, because the heavy and the rocket jump, in fact, kind of confirms that Coollerz is happy enough with his stack. The Tri-Bolt is going to shut that down. The more kind of Tri-Bolts and range damage that you hit, the better chance you have of being able to ambush someone, because the reality is you're not going to Ghost Walk someone unless you're on... If you're on death's door, sorry, because it's a massive risk. Now it's a little bit different because he knows he has the damage!
Oh.
But who needs damage when you've got a perforation? Coollerz making it 2-0. That was fantastic. And very brave too. But he was so confident that Av3k was weak enough to take out with an SSG. I love it.
Really solid plays from the Russian right there, looking to extend this lead and make this a quick 2-0 victory. Mega is up. Coollerz is just gonna leave it be for now.
now Av3k has got the better positioning, makes his way onto the item. Cooler, he wants to punish this. He knows that Av3k doesn't have a railgun just yet, and he wants to keep denying that item. Another rail to boot. Gotta be careful though of the tribal, but Av3k is so screamingly low. The spam, and somehow Av3k just jumps right in between all of those rockets and gets the trade. I definitely feel like that was about the best possible outcome for Av3k there.
But we'll now see what he does with it. Going straight off some of that plasma to spam through. No range for you, my friend. That is one good rocket though, in fact. And hang on a second. A lot more damage than you would often see in that situation without a railgun, to be honest. Piercing sight's going to get popped. Which way is he going to go? Cooler. Originally sitting pretty near the lights to just create that very tricky situation. Am I going to zig or am I going to zag? We're about to hit that 5-minute warning. Cooler in the lead. It's a small lead, but on a map like Blood Covenant, it can mean a great deal. Av3k's going to disengage and take this heavy. The healthier he is, the better, but I really like the way Cooler has been often. Just look at how, you know, obviously we get to see the X-ray during the spectator, but how rarely Cooler either makes his position known or gives Av3k anything that resembles an angle to work with. Cooler is seen when it's on his terms.
He's also doing an excellent job at maneuvering between the items. So you saw that very clearly in the previous engagement. Cooler made a fakey, faked out Av3k, and then just went to one of the major items because he opened up that side of the map by juking Av3k out and giving him essentially a clear route onto the Mega, knowing that Av3k essentially had no choice but to loop back around for the heavy instead. And out comes another aggressive ghost wall. Cooler drops down, Av3k does the same, and it will be the pull to get another frag on the board. Just 1 point down for Av3k right now.
Perfect example of the risk versus reward of a Ghost Walk, not used specifically to run away. Now only 1 frag is needed for Av3k to tie things up on map 2. Remember, Cooler did win that first map. We are in a best of 3, folks. Okay, some of that damage. Every time I see Cooler with a heavy machine gun in hand on this map, I get really nervous. His accuracy on that weapon on this map is off the chain.
Oh, absolutely. And you can do so much more consistent damage with it than with a railgun too. 20 points of health now for Av3k. Got very little resources to work with. Cooler rocket jumps up. He should know exactly where Av3k is right now. Wants to extend his lead a little more with the stack advantage he's got to work with. Av3k, can he make it onto the Mega health? He knows that Cooller's waiting. I think he's just gonna back out, and that's the wise decision to be sure.
With far too much
3 minutes left to go. Yeah, he doesn't want to expand the deficit anymore, right? There's 3 minutes left to go, 1 frag, perfectly doable, but turn that into 2, and all of a sudden the situation starts looking a lot less likely.
Av3k is going to have the knowledge, though, by not going for the Mega. That does 1000% mean that Cooler's going to have it, so there's more emphasis on that rail game just to make sure that he's getting as much damage as he can before the fight. But it goes back to what we talked about. He knows that Cooler is looking for aggressive Ghost Walks, and now Cooler has a bunch of stack because he's the one that's been in control, up until this Mega, of course. So that's got to make Av3k a little bit nervous, knowing that Cooler could be anywhere at any time. The piercing sight means at least, okay, I'm safe. He's going to go towards heavy, but now what? Now my piercing sight is gone? What's the play going to be? Oh, a read!
Hello.
Holy smokes.
That's not what you want to have happen to you the moment you pop out of a Ghost Walk. Still though, Cooler has got a good stack to work with. Av3k has no clue where his opponent is. There's a good delay between the 2 major items, so this could work nicely in Av3k's favor. Nice stack to work with. Cooler is just around the corner. He's gonna spot his opponent. Cooler has no Ghost Walk to get away with for another few seconds. And the LG is murderous as Av3k gets himself a tied game. However, Cooler did manage to deny the heavy right there. So Av3k is now extremely low when it comes to stack.
Cooler now knowing Av3k's kind of sitting around near Mega, fair to assume that his stack's still not going to be incredible. Fresh off the spawn. The question is, how many weapons did Cooler get access to? Av3k has to focus on recharging at the moment. He is in a good place for some of these items, so it certainly could be worse. But with it, the matter of it being 1 frag means that Av3k, if he plays careful, right before getting tagged by a rocket. Cooler has this knack on this map of just hitting you with the strangest rockets.
And now we're starting to see the shift towards a much slower game. Both players have been playing pretty passively for most of this map, but with a minute left to go, neither wants to overextend. They both just want to wait for the perfect opportunity and take as little risk as possible when engaging in a fight. Rails being exchanged right there.
Speaking of rails, Av3k hasn't got any. So that might be a bit of an alarm for him.
And just one rocket to work with as well. There we go, out of rockets, out of rail.
We need ammo
We'll be
right
able
now.
to reveal that, yeah. Now Coollerz does have the Ghost Walk at the ready, so he can just escape at a moment's notice. Av3k essentially has to force out the Ghost Walk first. Oh, Coollerz actually gonna use it aggressively. That will net him the heavy, but I don't know about that one. If he gets caught in a bad situation now, he is in serious trouble. And Av3k knows this. Av3k is well aware that Coollerz no longer has that get out of jail free card at the ready, and he wants to make something happen now.
Almost seemed like Av3k wasn't quite able to hear the rocket jump fresh off the heavy because he was kind of cycling around near catacombs as if Coollerz were nearby. But absolutely using the Ghost Walk as currency for a free heavy. Control over ability. It's a very cooler way of approaching things, but we are now in that sudden death. Remember everyone, Coollerz, one map up. If he gets one frag here, he will be moving 2-0 on against Av3k, but it isn't over until it's over. That rail, though, definitely doesn't help matters if you're in Av3k's position. Forced to disengage, the aggressive Ghost Walk, right as Piercing Sight was used. Is it going to be able to save Av3k's skin? Coollerz in a pretty funky position. He did some damage, that missed rail, okay. Coollerz not as in danger as he once was, but the fight towards Mega, he has to hit these rails, they matter so much, especially now!
Both players railable, both players extremely low. Heavy looks like it will be going in Av3k's favor. And now Coollerz has to play a very passive game. Now he does have some small resources to work with. Manages to get himself the Ghost Walk back up and running as well. So he still has that lifeline ready to go. Once again gonna come down to a long distance engagement. Av3k going for the heavy machine gun. And now 10 seconds left till heavy. Coollerz will be the first to set himself up for it. Av3k, is he going to make a move on this? He has the stack advantage. Coollerz knows exactly where he is.
He has to be careful though, because even though the Ghost Walk is ready, he is not particularly healthy. And now heavy. Likely to get soaked up soon. Yeah, there it is, Av3k. The objective is going to be in and out though. You don't want to get caught all the way out there with no defense mechanism. Here comes some Tri-Bolt. But again, hang on a minute, no rails. I didn't even notice that until just now. Coollerz has to get out of there, double jump. Get some of the all-important ammo. These rails are going to matter so much if Av3k is pumping out that damage from the same range. Chase.
Good use of the Ghost Walk. Very often you see people hang on to it just a moment too long, so they at least take that first damage as well before they decide to pop it, but Coollerz just instantly uses it to get away. Good rail as well, nice amount of tribal damage to follow up too. Mega will be going his way.
But it had put the two of them at such an even stack. But now Coollerz on max, and then some. With plenty of rails in hand, pretty much all the ammo for all the weapons he could ever dream of to get the one frag he's looking for. Av3k though, looking for the opportunity to spring. The Piercing Sight allowed that Tri-Bolt to do more than good damage to start things off. Coollerz. He's playing a risky game every time a rail goes off and there's a Tri-Bolt in hand. But again, Av3k hasn't been amazingly consistent with some of these rail shots.
No.
However, is this the moment? He's going to spring the trap. Ghost Walk has to get used, but Coollerz. Oh dear. He has to disengage, but it's going to be easier said than done against Av3k, known for being aggressive. And now Coollerz is so weak and in danger. Uh-oh.
Coollerz definitely not getting the right read in that situation though. Dropping down was about the worst decision for him to make because Av3k just stayed comfy at the top, keeping himself all the escape routes open. And Coollerz slowly starting to get his stack back up. Oh, Av3k's gonna hear that pick up, gonna come barreling through the hallway. Coollerz not quite ready rather with the Ghost Walk just yet. No, I said that, but okay. And Heavy will again go to Av3k. It's really just Coollerz on the back foot for the past few minutes. Manages to get himself a Mega to boot. But this is tricky and intense for both players, because if you're Av3k, you can constantly be on the lookout for a random aggressive ghost walk out of nowhere. Meanwhile, if you're Cooler, you constantly have to be careful of your opponent having that piercing side up and knowing exactly where you are no matter what the circumstances. So that really promotes this more passive, reactive playstyle on both of these players.
How Cooler was so close to death and managed to not only survive, but temporarily be in a position with more stack, perfectly timed drop down to not only hit that rail, but soak up the light armor. Ghost Walk, is this an all-or-nothing play? Looks like he's going to be aggressive. Doesn't get a huge amount and actually makes his position known, but it's going to be all or nothing. No, with the LG, both of them have an opportunity to disconnect. And there's no fight, but we might be damn close. 5 seconds until heavy. If you're Cooler, this is a scary position. The rail, he's railable, and he gets hit at the last minute. Av3k, last man standing on Blood Covenant, down to one rail, 5 seconds too long on the heavy at the end there. Look at the almost identical split. The only difference in the two items they took, even it's 24 light to 26 light armors for Av3k. One extra heavy, a complete identical pickup of the Mega. That was such a good map.
Absolutely, and that came down to basically the last second, right? A slight moment longer, Cooler would have been able to pick up heavy, he would no longer have been railable, and probably would have been able to make his way out of the room just fine. But Av3k clearly showing that Corrupted Keep doesn't necessarily mean that all of the following games are going to be the same way. It's kind of its own thing, and he managed to recover from that very nicely and found a good way to counter Cooler's random acts of aggression using the Ghost Walk, and also deal with the additional mobility that his opponent had.
There was such a, in all things considered, a very small amount of frags obtained, but it felt like that map was on really a razor's edge every time. There was so many tense moments, opportunities where Cooler, it's where I think his absolute kind of cool as a cucumber mentality come from. I mean, how many situations there, Flea, was he at almost death's door, yet he survives, disengages, kind of runs around, gets the stack back up. His use of the Ghost Walk was really impressive. There were a couple of times didn't quite work out, but they weren't really that punishing. It's just all that patience and all that back and forth down to that final moment where the heavy just seconds away from spawning, and it just didn't come to it. Almost a 2-0, but not quite.
Absolutely not, and this is putting us ready for that final decider map, which will be Blood Run, one of the Russian home bases and strongholds in Quake. And it remains to be seen how both players are going to move on from a game like this, right? Because if you play Duel yourself, you might know that after focusing for only a few minutes, it becomes all the more difficult to continuously keep track of the item timings and where your opponent is and what weapons they have. And it is such a taxing mental exercise for even 5 minutes, let alone a full game. And we just saw a 15-minute long match. So both of these players, they are going to take a bit of a mental beating from such a long, tense overtime. And it's going to be interesting to see how they manage to deal with this moving into the deciding game.
But it's not just that, it's that we're about to enter Blood Run, which is a map where if you are too impatient, you will just get rinsed out for it. So it's kind of what you just talked about with the mental strain that a much longer map than normal can put on you when you have to focus that hard. But now we're entering Blood Run, which is a very taxing map indeed for a lot of people. So hard to call this one, to be honest. It's constantly close between the two of these guys. And just to remind everyone, historically, as of very recently anyway, Av3k has had that upper hand on Cooler, but just look at how these maps go. Ultimately, it's very hard to call. Ison versus Strog and Peak is going to be the champion matchup. We are moments away from loading in right now.
Yeah,
last map.
The last one, this is the one to decide it all. It will be Cooler playing the Strog and Av3k on the ice. And so Av3k, he's got that turret, he's got that deployable item to keep his opponent in check and give him a lot of information, especially towards the edges of some teleporters. Whereas Cooler, he's got the movement speed, and of course, he has got the peaker little robot as well.
I think he was able to do more than sufficient super shotgun damage, though, to make that a rather even trade-off. Cooler would much rather shut down that light armor game than double back and get the light health if need be, but this is a tricky position. Yeah, that turret's going to give information for Av3k. top of the rockets. Almost so good. I loved that turret placement by Av3k, because if Cooler went by the door, the turret would have made noise and told him about it. Nice little refrag, by the way. And if he went downstairs, Av3k was lying in wait. So Cooler, it was unlikely he was going to survive that, but he almost did.
Immediately using the Peeker right there. It's a bit of a shame for Cooler that he went down that quickly, because he knew that his opponent didn't have rail, didn't have LG or shotgun, so he really had no good weapons to take down the Peeker. Luckily for Cooler though, that rocket just hit it straight in the face, took down the robot instantly, but that could have done a lot of damage. Very good decision from Cooler to use that ability in that situation.
I am concerned about that movement again. I always am when you see a crouch slider against someone who, you know, their whole utility and their tool set is not built around movement, that's for sure. And look at how quick Cooler can just fly around this map. Brings the trap on Av3k. Amazing use of the LG. Av3k with no armor in play. And even then, Cooler can shut it down.
Pretty aggressive blood run so far. Might have expected a much slower game, especially given how the final or the previous map ended. Players often tend to carry that over going into a new map, the playstyle of what they were last on, but this has been pretty decently explosive by blood run standards. 3 frags in 2 minutes, not something you see all that often.
Also at the same time, the turnaround. LG's gonna hurt Cooler quite significantly. The defensive rockets are coming through just a little bit for Cooler, but plenty of resources to soak up. A decent chunk of spam coming up from Av3k, but unfortunately it's not going to hit its mark. Cooler able to waste just enough time to get that light armor. But again, holding an angle, essentially. Looks like he's looking for it. Yeah, doesn't get it. Mega's going to be in the favor of Cooler. Peeker isn't going to last long. And now we're starting to show a lot more respect, I think. Less angles. Nice rail fresh off the teleporter. Always amazing how these players can be so ready for those angles off a teleport. I mean, that's just how much experience they have. That muscle memory is just built into their brains.
I like how Cooler...
Wow!
Okay. That rocket was aimed at the turret just as Av3k tried to slip on by, and it did a lot of damage to both of them. So the Polish player once again drops down. Now, I have to say, I really like how Cooler is using the Peeker. Very often you see players mainly pick Strog just for the speed and the crouch slide, but he is using the ability pretty much non-stop. Every single time he ends up dropping down when his opponent is still up, or he's in a safe zone, he just uses it and tries to get that extra bit of damage on the board. So, very happy to see such a proactive playstyle. Av3k caught looking completely the wrong direction right there, and that will make it an easy frag for Cooler.
Half of Cooler's frags, at least, by the way, have involved catching Av3k completely by surprise in an angle that he's not quite prepared for. Kind of insane, really, how Cooler is gliding around the map so much, and Av3k still hasn't really got a consistent bearing over Cooler's location.
Mega will be the next item to spawn.
Oh,
There's a little delay between the both, though.
Even
Nice
though-
rails.
yeah,
One more will do it.
Even though that rocket only did 10, it was enough to turn it into a 100 damage combo. And Av3k not really in a position to dish it out. Equally, spawns and goes towards the heavy. Patience for Cooler, that famous patience, not only on doing rockets, but in defense too. Just like waiting a little bit longer than other players might do just to guarantee that the rocket is going to hit the perfect spot for max damage. I love this discipline from Cooler, and always have.
What I'm not loving is how Av3k is approaching these fights. I feel like he's going into this way too aggressively. Even when he dies, first decision is to push right back out, try to do the damage when he's got next to nothing to work with. And Cooler, as you said, playing a very reactive, disciplined game, is just exploiting all of the holes in Av3k's attack plan. And it's paying him very nicely too. 6 frags of a lead on a map like Blood Run, especially when you're on the faster, more agile champion, that's going to be very difficult for Av3k.
Cooler's going to leave that light armor up for now. He knows that Av3k's not really anywhere near it, so it's possible for him to leave it. And now he needs to disengage. Guess what? Light trade to take, so it's not a huge issue to leave it. And now he definitely needs it. He can double up. I like these little bits of optimization from players. They'd rather fight first and then use the armor if the damage is taken rather than just shutting it down immediately. But I'm concerned for Av3k. Blood Run is historically a patient man's map, but Cooler, not only is he the one that's in the lead, and he's the one in the lead on Blood Run of all maps, he's got the movement advantage. And if Cooler, even at this point, we're about to hit that 6-minute mark, Flea, if Cooler wants to be the one, makes the perfect read on the teleporter. Oh, the Pika hurts so much. My point was, if Cooler wanted to now be more patient, he totally could, because he can run rings around Av3k. He can play the runaway game. Av3k can't chase him. Av3k has to make these hard calls near teleporter or whatever it might be. 6 frags with this little time is a lot on Blood Run.
Cooler definitely not just running down the clock just yet, though. Even though he very well could, he's still playing for the items and keeping a very central position on the map, usually around this tribal area, and just punishing Av3k over and over again when he keeps going for these items. And that's what I'm talking about. Av3k needs to establish a bit of a base stack first, get 100-100 stack, and get himself the main unholy trinity of weapons before he tries going in for these engagements. Just jumping onto it knowing that Cooler has been hitting like an absolute truck is only going to work out poorly.
And there's just so much, I guess, of a cool nature for Cooler here. I guess that's a really no pun intended moment. Sorry, I know that was terrible. It wasn't even intentional. But Av3k, he's going to try and shut down. He's going to try and shut down the heavy. But Cooler has tons of resources up his sleeve. That mid-air was excellent. And I do worry if surely there's zero chance now Av3k can make this comeback. There's so much work, such little time, and the frags, they just get even more impressive by the frag. Cooler, absolutely sublime showing.
Yeah, and I love that little bit of peeker tech right there. You basically go in for a rail engagement, hop behind cover, use the peeker, have your opponent destroy your peeker, and then you can shoot again before they are able to. And that's exactly how Cooler approached that. So he sacrificed the ability. Who knows, maybe he would have gotten lucky and still done more damage, but in the end, it allowed him to fire faster than his opponent on the next exchange of damage. And that ended up getting him the kill nice and easy. Now Av3k getting himself on the board again, but he needs so much damage, so many frags, 10 to be precise, in just 10 minutes to do it, or 2 minutes to do it rather. That's a tall order.
And it's not just a tall order, it's the fact that it's Cooler who is playing like this. I mean, surely it can't be. There's just not enough time to do what must be done. Av3k just getting overwhelmed by Cooler in the later stages of Blood Run.
Av3k has no answer to this, except for that. Okay.
I mean, every time Av3k gets a frag, he's weak anyway.
Yeah.
This is what's even kind of like a bad to worse situation, that when Av3k finally gets him, I mean, he's getting some great shots now. It's just unfortunate that they're being hit when there's quite literally nothing that can be done about it. Cooler has just way too much of a lead, and it's not even been through this rock-solid defensive play. He's been seeking and destroying Av3k on multiple occasions.
If Av3k would have played this way and landed these kinds of nice combo shots, who knows, 4 or 5 minutes ago, things could have ended very differently. But he's only now just revving up his engine, and you can tell by him walking around crouching like that, he knows that it's over and done with. Cooler just playing with the peeker, just for the hell of it, working out nicely for him too. But that does mean that it will be Cooler moving on ahead in the winner bracket, whereas Av3k will take a dip down to lowers for the rest of the tournament.
I think Cooler is definitely going to feel good about this. It's always hard to call, even though you look at the recent tear that Cooler has been on. It's just the nature that Av3k has, the past couple of times they've collided, Av3k has actually been the one that comes out on top. But if you're Cooler, he's been training hard, he's been working hard, he's been streaming a bunch. You can always go check him out on twitch.tv. And fundamentally, I'm sure he's happy with it. Like, there's really, at a pure base level, before you can even break into anything else, I'm sure he's just happy about this result.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that this just builds on the momentum that he had established coming into this tournament, right? We discussed it before the map started, or the game started rather. He had beaten first Quills and immediately afterwards Wenger in the last weeks of the online phase of Stage 3. And he's just continuing on that winning there, looking solid, the aim's on point, the read's on point, everything is looking good. Cooler, definitely a man to be reckoned with this tournament.
And if that's a taste of things to come, we very well might have a 2-time champ on our hands for Pro League, because that's one of the biggest talking points for me. going into stage 3 is that so many players in this bracket have either won a pro league, like stage 1 or 2, or QuakeCon if you're in Kilson's situation, or there's been some historical Quake champions land in the past. Like, this is truly a clash of champions, and Cooler is one of the biggest champions that we have going as of late. If he plays like that for the rest of the bracket, he totally could win stage 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Cooller's a big name for a reason, right? And I suppose in the end, it did seem like he was Yeti, actually, Flea.
Yeah, I figured that wouldn't be thrown back at me. I saw quite a lot of it in chat.
I liked it. Well,
I thought it was
coming from the bear in mind guy, mate. They'll prey on you like vultures, and I respect.
I can tell. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
You'll never live it down. It'll be with you for the rest of your life. Just embrace it.
I will. Gotta love it.
But what we can see from these maps, Cooler had a more than one-sided result on the Corrupted Keep, and that's just the nature of Corrupted Keep, and it's certainly not the first time Cooler has had a result as one-sided as that. But then things definitely took a interesting turn once we entered the Blood Covenant, because that was, it's like you said, it was pretty much a 15-minute map, and then Blood Run, it really, the mobility made a huge difference. The second Cooler can just glide around that map, consistently ambush, surprise, or even in some cases just catch the whiff of over-aggression coming out from Av3k. Cooler was just surgically accurate for a lot of this set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, similar to Rafa, actually, Cooler's mechanical skills just come on so much in the last year or so. From someone that's always been strong, it's definitely one of his biggest feats now, and to see him playing as crisp as this is worrying the competition.
Yeah, and I think that Rafa is just showing everyone that there's a new standard for everyone to head to, right? He was already an amazing top-tier player, but over the last year or two, you've really seen how much work Rafa has put into just the basic mechanics that every player has, but he just pushed it to the next level. And when you supplement that with his amazing tactical skills and his reading abilities, then, well, he's just an absolutely unstoppable threat, and I think that that has shown a lot of players that there's still a lot of room for growth, even if you are already a legend of Quake.
Yeah, and that's what's scary, really, to think how much these guys have achieved and how scary they were anyway, and they're all still progressing. So it just shows the level that it takes to be at this height within Quake. It's, yeah, it's insane, really. A bit more than CS as well.
Whoa, all right, mate. Don't start throwing around accusations like that, Dan. But we do see, of course, a man that is very well versed at a game like Quake. Of course, Cooler, there he is. He did take the series and did so relatively dominantly. The two maps he picked up as well, 13-5 and 12-3 on the Strug and Pika and the Glenor, respectively. Good rail accuracy as well, actually hitting quite a few disgusting ones throughout the course of the series, boys.
Oh yeah, and Cooler. It's kind of like this unsung quality that you don't really see it get talked about much, but when the time comes to, like, just throw down, it's like, we're here, our fight's gonna happen, whoever aims better is gonna win it. Cooler is like one of those players that, you know, he's got your back in that regard, because when he has hit that crazy rail or the LG, I mean, we haven't even really touched on Cooler's LG all series, but it was such a fantastic weapon all round. You know, it was the classic, really. Just the amount of times he was able to either ambush Av3k, or when they both, it was really prominent in Corrupted Keep because it's such an LG heavy map, but going toe to toe on every single map with it, you never really caught him having a bad one.